Ladies and gentlemen, the event will now begin. Kelly, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Nash, and welcome to today's webcast, Change Management for Legal Operations, Keys to Leading Change when Adopting Advanced Technology. This event is brought to you by Wolters Kluwer and sponsored by Corporate Counsel and Law.com as part of this week's Legal Operations in the Time of Disruption webcast series. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some basic housekeeping items to help you use the webcast console. First, this event is completely interactive and incorporates many of today's social media tools. You can tweet or directly post information to your Facebook and LinkedIn pages right from the console without having to open a new browser. Simply scroll along the bottom of the screen and click on the social networking widget of your choice. And we do encourage you to share your thoughts on the topic via social media throughout this event. If you have a question for one of our speakers, please enter it in the Q&A widget on your console. We do have a short amount of time and a lot of ground to cover here in the next 30 minutes. However, we invite you to ask as many questions as you may have. We will answer as many as possible during the Q&A at the end. And if we're short on time and don't get to your question, the Wolters Kluwer team will do its best to follow up with you afterwards. In addition, there are some other customizable functions to be aware of. Every window you currently see, from the slide window to the Q&A panel, can either be enlarged or collapsed. So if you want to change the look and feel of your console, please go right ahead. And now for today's topic and the reason you are all here. Advanced technologies like artificial intelligence can bring significant efficiencies and improved outcomes to the legal department. However, along with technology comes change, and if not managed properly, it can make or break your technology investment. We have two expert panelists here, Nathan Semenska, Director of Legal Operations and Industry Insights at Wolters Kluwer's ELM Solutions, as well as Kimberly Williams, Director of Global Legal Solutions at Citi. Nathan and Kimberly will address change management challenges that legal operations face as they bring new technologies to their organizations, as well as share best practices for how you can manage change in your legal department. So welcome, Nathan and Kimberly. Without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Nathan to begin our discussion. Nathan?
Thanks a lot. Hi, everybody. I hope that you're having a good day. We're going to get into the meat and potatoes here in a minute, but before I do that, I want to have a shameless plug for the 2020 ACC Legal Operations Maturity Benchmarking Report, which was produced in conjunction with my company, Wolters Kluwer. My job is to basically study the legal market, so I read reports like this all the time. This is a 60 to 70 page report. It's free. You can find it on our website. You can also download it in the tool that you're in right now. And you should receive a follow-up email at the conclusion of this webinar that has this attached as well. I encourage you to check this out. It's 60 to 70 pages. I read these things all the time. I'm not saying this to be salesy. We're not selling anything, but this is, in my opinion, a top 3 to 5 report in the legal operations space. It's very exciting. It has a ton of data about 16 different legal operations functions that happen in corporate law departments, and it breaks down the self-perceived maturity levels of about 300 different corporate law departments in those 15 or 16 different functions. Functions like, financial management, outside counsel management, inside counsel management, contract lifecycle management, things like that. Another very interesting thing about the report is that it does an analysis basically showing how much maturity is increased by adding a dedicated legal operations worker to your team, as opposed to having other people sort of fill in and do that. And the results are pretty dramatic in some cases. So if you work in legal ops, or if you need legal ops in your law department, but not maybe everyone else agrees, this might be the very ammunition that you need to advocate for change and to do better. So with that, we will begin the actual presentation. And we're going to talk a little bit about AI. This isn't really a presentation about AI. It's about advanced technology, but we're going to use AI as a proxy for talking about advanced technology because it's a type of advanced technology. And the first thing that I would like you to know about it is that it is not the future. It's the present. When you use Google Maps, okay, that's artificial intelligence. This isn't science fiction. It's been around for a decade. Right now, about 12% of corporate law departments are using artificial intelligence in some capacity. That's according to the 2019 Clock State of Industry survey. I analyzed that survey carefully, and I know that the respondents tended to be smaller companies. Obviously, there are many large companies as well, but they tended to be smaller. And another thing that I know is that larger companies tend to have a bigger budget for technology, legal technology, and greater adoption. So my guess is that this number is actually quite a bit higher than 12% if you look at larger corporate law departments. And I think many of you have probably seen this diagram before, but this is a thing called the Roberts diffusion curve that came from a professor at, I think, the University of New Mexico about the way that technology is adopted in companies. And you'll see here there's 5 basic buckets. There's innovative, early adopters, early majority, late majority, and laggards. And if you look at the early majority, that is where most legal technology is right now. So if you see legal hold, matter management, e-billing, contract management, things like that, those still haven't achieved universal adoption, but they're by no means cutting edge. These are more or less standard tools that everybody is using if they have had a chance to purchase them. But the interesting thing is that artificial intelligence is down here in the 2 to 14% adoption level. And we know from the Clock survey that it's something like 12. So it's right on the verge there, where it's the early adopters who are using it right now, but it's headed into the early majority in the next couple years. I've seen data from Brad Blickstein, who's another consultant in our space. And according to him, most corporate law departments believe that they're going to be using AI in the next couple years. So this isn't the wave of the future, it's the wave of the present. So to blend this together with change management and legal operations, most legal ops directors agree that their job is, quote, primarily change management. And that's according to the 2019 Blickstein LDO survey. I think it's important to notice that even though 63% of them say their job is primarily change management, I would think that the 37 remaining people, a lot of them probably think that change management is a substantial part of their job. So change management and legal ops are kind of the same thing in a lot of ways. But one of the interesting things about the 2020 Wolters Kluwer ACC maturity survey that I was talking about a minute ago is it ranks 15 or 16 different functions that I was describing before. And legal ops directors basically believe that law departments aren't good at change management. That doesn't mean that legal ops directors themselves think that they aren't personally good at change management. It is more about the entire law department. But if you look at all these different functions on the right, compliance, contract management, et cetera, you'll see that change management is very close to the bottom. So by their own estimation, law departments believe that they stink at change management. And I would say that it probably even belongs closer to the bottom than it is here, because innovation management is at the bottom. And I've never really heard anyone use that term before. I think that is a mentality that's blended into some of these other areas, but I'm not sure if it makes sense to talk about it as a standalone. So not only do law departments think that they are not good at change management, but they also don't really think that they're good at any particular aspect or sub aspect of change management. So they don't have standardized processes or aren't good at them. They're not good at project management. Change management isn't really part of the culture, according to these folks. And people aren't that great about communicating change and staying on the same page. So across the board, lots of trouble with change management. The quote-unquote good news is that no industry is good at change management. So this is an article from Harvard Business Review from about 7 years ago, but I really don't think it's changed. Most studies still show a 60 to 70% failure rate for organizational change. So I don't think that corporate law departments or the legal industry needs to feel bad that their own perception is that they're not good at change management, because nobody thinks that they're good at change management. But we can always do better. Now, one of the interesting things about the maturity survey that I was talking about is that even though on average corporate law departments think that they're not good at change management, there are 5.7% of them that think that they're good. Okay, so basically they had 6 buckets, and the people in the top 2 buckets were the advanced people, and 5.7% of folks rated themselves as being good at change management. So you don't need to be discouraged. There are ways to do things. There are examples of success that you can copy. It's just that most people haven't got there yet. So that's sort of the intro to this conversation. And now we're going to talk with a bona fide expert in change management, Kimberly Williams. Change management is how she pays the bills. She works at Citi. And so let's just start off with the question, Kim. Why is this so hard? Why can't anybody seem to get this right?
So thank you, first of all, for the very kind introduction. I think there are a number of reasons, not surprisingly. Probably the easiest way to think about it for me in terms of the challenge is a misalignment among the stakeholders, right? So for those of us working in the operations team, for us to do any of the initiatives that we want to implement within our law department, we need to engage with finance, we need to engage with HR, we need, obviously, first and foremost, to engage with our partners in legal, the practitioner community, the paralegals, whomever else is part of that team. And very often there is not a clear alignment on the scope and the purpose of the change. And so that is the baseline, right? We really need to spend the time. I think we sometimes get a little bit, too far out over our skis in terms of conceiving of the great implementation we want to do without spending the time to think about what are the benefits for the end users, what are the asks that we need from the end users, and how do I get their buy-in? That's the most important thing. We need to have that buy-in up front, and we need to maintain it over time.
So these are some basic takeaways. My organization is working on a white paper about change management in the legal industry specifically. And these are sort of 5 bullet points that are going to be talked about in that white paper. And Kim, I know that you know all about these because we've talked before. But could we go through some of these together and just have you shed your wisdom on these various points?
Yeah, and when you were going through the beginning of the deck, I thinking about the project management, right, and seeing that sub-segmentation of the law department participants who feel like project management isn't a strength within their department. And the fact of the matter is that project management is a job, right? It's often not treated as a job, but it's a job. And for most law departments, in-house or even law firms, it effectively becomes a side of the desk assignment for people with other jobs, right? It's very rare that there are full-time project managers, and to the extent that there are full-time project managers, they tend to be devoted to maybe just e-discovery projects or certain, they're very niche. They're not dedicated across the department. So I think scoping your implementations around your project management availability is really key, right? When we talk about embedding change management processes, how are you really going to do that? How are you really going to resource that? Okay, so that's, where you need to start. You need to have a realistic view of your resourcing capabilities, and that's in terms of personnel and obviously budget. When you're creating goals, and then again, going back to doing that, never make an assumption. I think one of the, we talk about what are some of the pitfalls, and one of the biggest pitfalls is sort of assuming that we understand the pain points, needs, incentives of our broader law department community. It's very important to take that pulse and building goals, and also in, to your point 3, communicating those goals, right? So you may have a project that's going to get you from point A to point B, and it's going to get you there. And you're buying a car; it can go from 0 to 60 in 0.02 seconds, right? It does all these amazing things. But if the passenger in that car, they're never going to drive it. They don't really care where you're going. They just know they have to be in the car. Talk about the climate control and the cup holders, right? Sometimes the lawyers are just coming along. It's not really that their day-to-day, whether it's from, having better data, right? Sometimes maybe a project so that you can build better reporting around better data. That may be relevant to the 5 people on your OpCo who get those reports, and it is critically important to those 5 members, and those are the leaders of your firm or your department, right? It is a critical deliverable. But for the other 100 people in the law department, how do you incentivize them to engage in that and to sustain that energy over time? So all of that is, it's a little bit, this is a little bit touchy-feely, but being able to look at the perspectives of the other participants and think about what you need from them and how to incentivize them to participate as much as possible.
I can share a personal story here. My first I'm an attorney, but I switched into legal ops. And one of the first things that we did was I was working at a large corporate law department, and there was a policy that any matter that was over, any outside counsel matter that was 15 Gs or more, or that was expected to be 15 Gs or more, needed to have a budget from outside counsel. And yet, out of about 1,000 legal matters, fewer than 50 actually had a budget. Okay. Yes, and right. that had gone on for some time before I started working at the place. And what we ended up doing was basically we just published a statistics on, matters that needed budgets that didn't have them at the end of every month. And we had the report sent out from the GC's not personal email account, but from his email account so that people would actually read it. And it took something like, 3 weeks till that number,
to get the budget,
to go from like 3% to like 95%. So, is that the sort of thing that you're talking about when you say provide incentives?
Well, yes. So there are 2 categories of incentives, right? So there are perhaps a negative incentive, and then there's a positive incentive, and both are valuable and important. I think calling people out is a form of incentive, right? It's a form of motivation, right? You don't want to see your matter in that email. You don't want to be on that list. Others are, it's very low. But surveys, that people love feeling like they have a voice in how a decision is made, and it might not have any impact on what you actually implement. It may only impact how you message what you implement, but when you do the survey, you're capturing giving people an opportunity to say, this is what's important to me. This is what would make me more productive. This is what I value. And again, it can be the exact same deliverable, but what you talk about and what you lead on from a training perspective and an ongoing support perspective is focused on those things so that people feel like there's an alignment with what motivates them, right? And that's not going to be in every instance, but establishing that kind of dialogue is, you want to be a trusted partner, right? We all hear that, the trusted partner. Well, how do you get to be a trusted partner? One, you manifest a capacity to actually hear and process the inputs you're receiving. Two, and you demonstrate, ideally with metrics of your own, right? So we were talking about e-discovery as an example, and it's a very, easy and accessible example. And there's lots of, there's lots of money, lots of churn. Everybody does it. If you want to go into move towards AI in your e-discovery, and maybe it's, for projects of X size, right? You're not going to apply it to every slip and fall, but you want to move towards AI. How are you going to demonstrate that? Well, you do some testing. You work with the stakeholders. You show them the ways in which the human intervention, linear approach is not, in fact, as consistent. And you can show the reports, but you can also do the tests on your own. You can do a real live pilot on your own, show them, have them touch and feel, have them do some of the review and gauge it against the AI tool. They'll be able to see for themselves, right, what the difference is and what the effort is. And for most of the, if we're talking about the lawyer community, that's not even the stuff they want to do, right? That's the stuff they're afraid of not doing because they feel there's a risk associated with not doing it, but they don't want to review documents. So if you can show them that they don't have to and that they're not, in fact, increasing their risk, they're going to be so much happier, and you're a winner, right? And so that's an easy win in some respects, right? Because you're giving them what they really do want, which is not doing privilege logs.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I think you're making a good point. This is something that I have felt in terms of persuading attorneys. I feel like pretend that you're in a court. Courts are persuaded by evidence, right? Not necessarily rhetoric. So you're talking about letting them go see for themselves. Don't just tell them that this is the way that things are, but actually let them physically examine it. And then there's no more skepticism. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's a great, and that's a sort of, I don't want to call it an easy win, but when you go back to the point of incentives and communication and all of those things, right? That could be the sort of tip of your spear, right? A project like that. You want to, you probably have an agenda of a half a dozen things that you want to implement within the next 12 to 18 months. Prioritize those in terms of, what can and I apologize, I have a animal who wants to be in the room and he cannot. He's protesting. He's staging a protest outside. If you prioritize, what can I deliver kind of early, right? You want to, even if it's not the biggest win, you want to sort of get that track record. You want to, it's a lot of it is psychology, right? You want to show something easy, something fast that you can get off the ground. And then when you're asking for more, when you need, whether it's budget, time, the sort of pain of transforming a process that, maybe there's a little bit more engagement that you need across the community. You have that track record. You have that, you've established that confidence in your partners to get that done. Don't start with the biggest thing. That may be the most transformational thing, but it's also going to be the most painful. And you might not, if that fails, right, because you haven't established that credibility up front, then it's just, you're back at the bottom of the hill, kind of. So
got it.
Start small.
Got it.
Bitty, right?
So I would like to continue this conversation, but I do think that we have got some questions from the audience. So could we jump into those?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We do have a few minutes left. Sure. Yeah, we have a few minutes left, and there's one particular question that came through that's a great question, and that is, as legal departments transition from office-based work to more remote work, how will this affect change management? What steps can be implemented? It's a two-part question. What steps can be implemented to address the increase in remote work?
So this is an excellent
Kimberly,
question, and thank you. I'll kick it off. I actually had some notes just thinking about this, so thank you for raising it. So COVID and the circumstances surrounding COVID to some extent is an opportunity for, I think, legal departments, right? They're for operations teams. This is the continuity of business circumstance that we've all been harassing our colleagues to test for the past 5 years, right? This is the user testing requirement that we've all been harassing our colleagues to participate in for the past 5 years. This is the proof of concept of why we've been terrorizing people about this particular thing, right? It's actually happening. So it provides, I think, this is your time to shine, right, legal ops, because there are things, whether it's, maybe printing is a challenge for you off-site, right? Maybe that's been a limit, but now how are people supposed to do certain types of work? How are you supposed to approve checks or payments or all these other things, or if you can't print from home? So there's an opportunity here to leverage some of the, potentially, if you've been working on these things initially already, but to also get them off the ground because the impetus is so manifest, right? And you can, this is the point in terms of establishing that credibility, right, where you can really hit the ground running. And then when we're back to whatever looks like normal, you will have already gotten a lot of buy-in behind some of the foundations of other projects that maybe you've already been working on, but in terms of, getting VDI across, right? So everybody doesn't have to have a laptop maybe anymore, right? So that everybody is using their VDI. That could be a huge budget win for you, right? You going to a different model. So those types of things that you can do right now are this is the moment, I think.
Excellent. Yeah. We also have time for one more question we'll squeeze in here. Could you please tell what is considered to be a normal team of legal ops for a bank's legal department? How many people with what specific functions?
For a bank's legal department. I think financial institutions manage these processes differently, right? So I'll talk about the type of activities. It may not all be in legal ops. Maybe some of these sit in compliance in other banks. Maybe some of them sit in finance in other banks, right? They can sit anywhere. Maybe some, it just depends. But the type of activities that we see in legal ops include, obviously, an e-discovery team, the budget and finance teams, so the teams that work on the budgets with the firms, but also the reserves, right, for settlements and other things that are related to the finance process, reconciliations across currencies, all of those things that may be relevant to the finance process depending on your financial institution. The outside law firm management, right? So how are firms approved, conflicts review, timekeeper approval. Maybe within that team is they're also looking at the diversity of your panel, diversity of your vendors, those types of things. The technology team, the team that manages the technology specifically devoted to the legal department, does the training, system administration, support, innovation, people who may be devoted to innovating for your department, and as well as the ops, the sort of core team, let's say, who are looking at, maintaining invoices, payments, communicating with the lawyers across the different practice groups in terms of the requirements, the compliance needs, et cetera, for their practice areas and legal holds, that type of thing. So those are the, I guess, and project managers. Oh my gosh, you could forget. Project managers, which again may sit in functions or they may sit centrally, right? So there's lots of ways, I guess, to design that, but I think those are the activities that you need to support your legal department. I hope that's helpful.
All right, great. Yes, thank you so much, Kimberly, for addressing both of those great questions from the audience. We are just about out of time. 30 minutes has gone by way too fast here, but this has been a really informative session, and we'd like to thank you both, Nathan and Kimberly, for joining us today. Thanks, of course, to everyone in our audience for joining us as well. We definitely hope that you'll continue to take part in the Legal Operations webcast over the next couple of days and glean some more valuable insights from all of our speakers. So thanks also to Law.com and Corporate Counsel for their support in hosting this week-long series. Just as a reminder to everyone, this webcast will definitely be archived, and you will receive the link to access the recording at a later time if you so choose. So with that said, thank you everyone again, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.